My friends, it turns out that we have been lied to. For years, whether on social media sites or from previous game experience, we have been told that the answer to a massive enemy infantry attack was a legendary hammer and anvil tactic. Smash the enemy between your infantry lines in a monstrous cavalry charge, and the enemy would surely scatter like leaves in the wind. The problem is, it doesn't work like that in Bannerlord. Like you, I learned it's actually the best way to lose battles and get mauled as our horses run from the field of defeat. Well, the good news is that tactics are what we do on this channel, and today we're going to show you how to dominate the enemy with cavalry in Bannerlord. Alright friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related, and we're going to do some cavalry heavy tactics today. Now this is not my preference. Fellas on the channel know this. They know that I think standard cavalry in Bannerlord suck. Now in this case we do have Battanian units, so we have at least a few skirmisher units. We have some infantry, and we have Fiend champs, but we have 5% Fiend champs, right? We have virtually no archers here. And we're going to face a mixed army of Valandians. This is going to be a very difficult situation to win, but I think with tactics we can still pull this off. Now it makes sense for these scenarios here that we do a little sergeant example for the first one, and we will do roughly even battlefield numbers. We're slightly outnumbered, as you can see, and the units for both sides are of equal quality. In other words, tier 4, 5, and 6 units for both sides. Now, as this battle starts here, and we'll try to speed through the sergeant process because they're going to get destroyed, let's talk about these units here, right? Battanian cavalry is famously bad. I guess you would say infamously bad. On Reddit and whatnot, people lament how bad they are. And that's true, at least of the scout, right? The Battanian scout really should have stuck to scouting. They should be in the woods somewhere telling the Fiend champs where the enemy is to destroy them, right? Instead, the enemy's going to charge with the scouts here, an entrenched Valandian position, and it's going to be ugly. Now they're already taking arrow fire, and I bet initially there'll be a little bit of a positive death spam here from the Battanians because of those skirmishers. Javelin cavalry, Javcav as people like to call them, do nice front-loaded damage. In fact, there's a few kills. There's several kills, right, as the Battanians rack up kills. Those are all horse kills, and they're not the spear cavalry. That is the Javcav dumping in all of their javelins. We're going to learn from that, right? Or more accurately, we have learned from that. We're going to take advantage from that when we fight this battle. Now, the rest of their tactics here are suboptimal. Their infantry is not fighting in concert here. It's slowly marching up while their cavalry gets dismembered. Their scouts are charging, right? All these very weak scouts are in here as if these guys are tier 7 elite Battanian lords, and these Valandian infantry are just designed to destroy cavalry. Billmen, pikemen, sergeants, bolgers. These guys, from the time they were 12, these Spartan Valandian units were taught how to destroy cavalry, and you face, in this situation, you face off against them with the worst cavalry in the game. There's no doubt that the scout especially is a terrible cavalryman, and you can hear them routing like weak little bitches as we get throttled something fierce in this first example. We're already looking at almost a 1-to-2 kill ratio. Our troops are starting to rout. And look at these horrible stats, right? The scout had 8 kills and lost 100. That is ignominious. They made that word in the dictionary, ignominious, for the Battanian scout, because that is as bad as it gets. They got a 1-to-12 ratio of kills. So this whole battle was a debacle. Let's come back where we're not sitting in our face in a cow patty, and let's do some tactics here. Let's see if we can't win what really looks like an impossible battle here. Over almost two-thirds of the Valandians were left on the field. Now, we're not going to change anything except let's make it harder, right? Because we're sadists on the channel. We wouldn't want you guys to think that we were doing this easy. Right now, we'll be outnumbered by almost 20%. Same exact units, same makeup, right? We'll use the scout. We'll just hopefully use them differently. We may not win all these, but at least if we can show some tactics that are advantageous for you fellas, we will do so. Now, I got to be in charge. That's going to help. We'll switch it back to commander mode here. And I'm going to use, let's see. I'm going to use a lot of divisions here. This probably will drive guys crazy, but at this stage, I'm so used to fighting Bannerlord battles with 6, 7, 8 units, 6, 7, 8 divisions, that if I don't have it, I actually fuck up. And what happens is essentially I click a button, order the 6th command charge, kite, do whatever, and there isn't anybody there. Well, if you know anything about the Bannerlord command system, if you select a unit where there isn't no number there, it selects everybody, right? So we don't want that. Yeah, excellent. So this is what I want. I want a shock troop division. We are going to divide the Battanian infantry. We're going to fight this in... I'm not leaving the area. Take it easy. I don't know what that was all about. We're going to fight this battle intelligently. That includes shield and shock. And you see it happened right there. It selected everybody. So even though I have 23 archers, I'm still going to make 2 divisions. Because otherwise I will simply mess up. I'm so used to using 8 divisions that it's actually hard for me to use less. So 1, 2, 3... Let's get shield and shock uphill here. Normally, I like to put my 6th, 7th, and 8th on this right flank, but with this hill here, I want these cavalry to be able to charge downhill with that shield and shock. Again, to reiterate, if this is somebody's first episode on the channel, shield and shock is where you attack the enemy with shock troops. Shock troops, your polearm, your falksmen, with a line of cavalry in front of them. And it's an escort, right? Those guys are our lowest quality guys. In fact, there's our scouts. And what are they going to be doing? Holding up their shield. They do a decent job blocking arrows, and they will pave the way for our shock troops to arrive unhurt. Once those shock troops arrive, they're going to do major damage. And of course, we will attack in concert. Now you can see we're outnumbered by about 70. So what is that? Not quite 20%, 15% here. And we're going to sort of swirl the enemy around here. One of the things you really want to do in Bannerlord in general is try to manipulate your opponent, or any opponent for that matter. We're going to sort of feint attack, and we're going to flank them and confuse them and do false charges and stuff like that. We want the enemy perturbed, especially their crossbow. If their crossbow just dig in and just shoot the whole battle, we're in trouble. In fact, one of the best things they could do, the developers could do with archers in Bannerlord, at least the AI that we're fighting against, is cement their feet in the ground. Once the battle starts and they're in a decent location, tell them to not move ever again. Literally just tell them don't move ever again, right? And that wouldn't work as well for the Valandians, of course, because they'd run out of ammo, but especially your Fiend champs, they should just never move. I would just, if I was designing the AI for the Battanians, I would put them in a good location and tell them don't move. Because you want them expelling all their arrows, but also you want them holding their ground, right? They're not killing stuff when they're running around. When they're standing still, they're shooting. If something comes up to them, they annihilate it with their 2-hand, and they go to work. Now, it's bad so far, right? This is not looking great. The shield, the shock and shield division is being attacked up there, so we'll counter it by having that 3rd division move in. Back here, we're doing what I said we're going to do. We're going to swirl. And the Valandians are doing us a favor here, right? Their 60 cavalry, 79 cavalry is attacking our 150. So what do? You attack, right? If you're in a bar fight and it's all of a sudden it's your friend and you against one of the enemy, kick his ass, right? And then get to the rest of the guys in the fight. Always fight 2 enemy forces at once when you have the opportunity to, right? The Valandians volunteered that, so we accept. It's just strength in numbers, right? We have twice as many cavalry there. Now they're starting to fall back. We're starting to move behind the enemy with skirmishers. I want that 7th division. I didn't really go through the divisions in this battle. These are less tutorials because there's a lot going on here, and more basically a demonstration of how an experienced Bannerlord player might use cavalry. I've got our skirmishers coming over the hill here. We're protecting them with this cavalry. Now notice the javelins, right, are just skewering the enemy. That's that sound you hear as our 7th Corps dumps javelins into the enemy. Now we're going to start bringing this 8th Corps behind the enemy, and they're no longer on horse. I want these guys off horse. The Battanian horsemen, the tier 5, is a decent little armored unit, right? They have good armor. They're kind of tough. They've got decent weapon skill. They're just not good cavalrymen, right? So just like the Drudziniks, we're going to put these guys on foot. Now the rest of their units are being surrounded and swallowed up here. I've got the 2nd Corps, the weakest cavalry, and all we're going to do here is basically try to keep these sharpshooters occupied. They're not going to kill them, but they're going to kind of knock them around, jostle them around, and it's kind of doing precisely what I said the AI shouldn't do here. Their crossbow is searching for a spot to shoot. There isn't going to be anyone, right? So the 8th Corps is charging. I like that sign, right? People are routing already. The 6th skirmishers are here. I didn't have time to mention them. They're moving in, chucking javelins. The 1st division should be coming. And meanwhile, we're just going to drag this scout division around. Everywhere the skirmishers go, we will go, right? Basically going to follow them like the Antichrist posse here and make sure they can't shoot. Because if sharpshooters aren't shooting, they're not doing a lot of good. In fact, they're just kind of, well, they're panicking is what they're doing. They look like pigs to the slaughter. Now, the Valandians are getting some kills here, but the death spam looks good. Our infantry lines just arrived, mostly intact. The 8th Corps joins the infantry lines behind them, and the enemy gets swallowed up in some kind of maniacal, red-centered, green outside donut. And not a massacre, right? We didn't destroy him here, but it's a pretty sound win in a battle where the AI got completely obliterated. And this is about as good as I could have hoped for, right? We're facing what I consider a much superior army makeup. You can see our archers are still shooting, our 20 archers. I'll be curious to see how many kills they get. But this is obviously a highly successful demonstration. Now we're going to do a few more demonstrations here. We'll try some other kingdoms, right? We will try, I guess we'll have to try Valandians too, right? With their, what I consider relatively mediocre cavalry. And almost a 2-to-1 kill ratio, right? We will take that. The skirmishers did huge work here. And of course, you guys on the channel know that I pump up the skirmishers. Obviously, the fiends did some killing, but they weren't even really part of the battle because they never got close enough. Shock troops did excellent work, and again, that's that shield and shock tactic. It works extremely well to have cavalry lead shock troops. It's incredible symbiosis. I remember the day I had that epiphany. I was like, oh, you got these guys with no shields. They move fast. You got to get them into action. We got to protect them. Let's pair them up with some cavalry, and this is your result. All right, let's get to some other examples here. All right, so another example here. Let's go ahead and try Valandia against the Empire. We will have the sergeants bumble through this, but let's talk about the settings first before we dive into it. We will play Valandia against the Empire, right? You've got a whole bunch of Banner Knights and Vanguard. You're facing Garrios or something like that, and they have a nice, solid mixed army with more infantry than anything. That's a fairly typical mix you're going to face from the Imperials. Now, both sides have tier 4 through 6 units, so both sides have access to essentially equal quality troops, and we're outnumbered by about 10% here. Now, fans of the channel know that I think basically Spear Cavalry and Bannerlord is broken. And I should qualify that since it's going to be a minute or two here before our guys charge to the slaughter. And I think part of the reason that people like cavalry is in the early game, they're actually pretty beneficial. Because if you have 20 or 30 cavalry, they don't get bound up on each other. They stab the enemy. They sort of permanently cycle charge. They're hard to slow down if you're the enemy force with 30 guys kind of spread around. But when you have a huge vanguard like this running into the infantry, it just doesn't go well. Now we'll see. Maybe there's a nice initial death spam here as they smash into the enemy lines. Or maybe not, right? Because the enemy has sharpshooters scorching them. Of course, as is often the case, the AI doesn't use its other units with the cavalry. Already there are horses racing off the battlefield here, and that's a bad death spam. That's not just a bad death spam. That's a tragedy, right? This is Shakespearean type stuff. There's one kill like every once in a while, and then a huge fizzing screen of red as our cavalry is just flat out exterminated. I mean, glue for sale. That's what you'd be saying about this battle. It just doesn't work, right? You can't charge infantry, you can't charge archers. So the question really comes down to what is cavalry good for in Bannerlord? Well, we're going to use them a little differently here. They have a 1-to-8 kill ratio in this battle. We don't need to actually watch this battle all the way through. It's already over, right? We're outnumbered, and you lose half your army in the initial 30 to 60 seconds. Now, fans of the channel know that I like ranged cavalry. Ranged cavalry's very versatile. It's deadly. And we do have crossbow, so we're going to make 2 divisions here. We're actually still going to use our crossbow as our main killing power. Even though it's a quarter of the army here, or I guess it's almost a third of the army here, we're still going to use them as major forces of killing power. And that is very simply because archers and Bannerlord are too powerful. I say that a lot, and I get told to STFU. The guys on Reddit oftentimes are like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're not using your cavalry right. Well, I'm going to let those guys continue to think that. I've tried 1,000 different ways to use cavalry, and it's never anywhere near as efficient or deadly as archers and skirmishers and infantry. It's just not even close. We'll see what we can do here, though, and I'm getting kind of creative in my head, thinking about what we can do here. I'm going to run 2 different defensive units of cavalry, 2 crossbow divisions, and 2 attacking wings of cavalry. The 7th and 8th will be charging units, while the 2nd and 3rd are going to protect our crossbow. Now, we're going to split our crossbow up, and we're going to try to get them on the flanks of the enemy. In fact, if we can, we're going to have this 1st division of cavalry and basically square it. We're going to dismount them and square it, and maybe the enemy will sort of suck into it, and that'll help us rack up some kills as well. We could maybe do a little bit of hammer and anvil. The bottom line is hammer and anvil doesn't work either, right? You guys go try it, right? The guys still tell me it works. I've tried 100 different angles. I've tried a skein. I've tried square. I've tried a loose formation, shield wall. I've tried, you know, the bottom line is they just don't use their spears right. And the momentum of cavalry in Bannerlord is nothing like what you would think it would be in real life. I mean, the whole idea of a hammer and anvil is the enemy's crushed between the pounding weight of your horses and spears and the shield wall of infantry on the other side. It just doesn't work in Bannerlord, right? That's the bottom line. You'll get some kills, but it's nowhere near effective as what it probably should be. All right, so our 2nd and 3rd are in shield wall, and those guys have one job: eat arrows for the first 60 seconds of this battle. This 1st division, I'm going to kind of bait the enemy in a square. It's mostly good cavalry, so they'll have good survivability. But again, I think one of the keys to success here will be using these crossbow divisions. And when you have cavalry and when you have crossbow, and this is a very unusual army mix, by the way, when you have crossbow and cavalry and no infantry, that's highly unusual. One of the advantages you have is you control the flow of the battle. You could target units in a multiple target of units, like this example over here. Look, there's 2 different divisions. We're going to be able to attack that pursuing cav division. Again, it's like the first battle, strength in numbers. The infantry line is slowly coming up while we're going to kite. We're going to move that square of infantry, formerly cavalry, back. We will move our crossbow off to the sides. We're going to attack their 2 cavalry wings on the sides and basically let this infantry just sort of stand here looking pretty while we kill their cavalry wings. We're backing that 1st division up. We're shooting them with crossbow. And I don't mind if these guys expel all their ammo, right? Because eventually that crossbow can help charge and they will be decent infantry. Now I'm going to assign 1 division to attack there and the other one to play basically defense. Against a lot of archers like we are here, I already mentioned it, archers are deadly in Bannerlord. It's good to cav screen against archers. It's a good way to immobilize them. Basically put a line in a shield wall and those archers are largely negated. Now we've got to deal with this infantry. It's a lot, right? So we're going to try to protect with 1 division of cavalry and slam hammer and anvil with the rest, right? I already told you it doesn't work very well, but it's better than nothing, right? It's better than just charging your cavalry head first into the enemy. At least if we can get their infantry facing the other direction, we can menace them with our cavalry. Now, there's an advantage here that you normally don't have with infantry as I sort of wait for the charge. If they turn to face our cavalry, they're being shot in the back by our crossbow. So in a way, this is more effective than hammer and anvil, because if you can get them to confront your cavalry on the opposite side as your archers, you know, your archers are scorching them in the back, right? And we're really starting to rack up kills now with these crossbow divisions. Now it looks like both enemy cav divisions are dead, or mostly dead. We've got 151 archers that I'm just sort of trying to buy time with while we destroy their infantry. Because once their infantry is dead, these crossbow won't represent a huge threat. They might even rout. So 231. They still have a lot of infantry, but I'm sure a lot of them are injured, right? So we can start to close in here, and we're going to do consecutive hammer and anvils. Right, here comes the first. We're going to drag these guys right in behind the enemy and have them charge. This other division here is the next cycle. And basically, one division after another, we're going to charge. And then pretty soon here, it'll be time just to F1, F3. Next division's coming in here, right? These guys are behind the enemy, theoretically, pouring in. But look at how they're running into their own cavalry. This is one of the problems with cavalry. They don't stay together, and when they do stay together, they get in each other's way. All right, crossbow's probably out of ammo. Time for them to charge. Up they come. The enemy's still fighting our square in the center there. That's helping. And the death band looks pretty good, right? We're definitely putting a whipping on these infantry so far. It's time to close the deal here, right? It's time to finish this battle. Let's menace these archers. I don't know why they're running up like this, but let's charge them with cavalry. Our guys can stampede. They don't do a lot of damage, but it knocks them around, right? And it's making sure they can't shoot. And their infantry's in the center here. Let's drag everybody towards the center and just have an all-out charge. I mean, I'm fine with an F1, F3 here, right? Their infantry and archers are directly in the middle. Our square can be told to charge. And now you just hope that we've done enough damage in the early part here to win the day. It looks like it. The death spam and the power bars certainly favor us. We just blew through the center of their core there. They were sort of disheveled, and that's it, right? They're starting to rout. So pretty successful, actually. Some guys might even see this and say, see, cavalry's dominant. The only thing is I could have fought this same force of Imperials with 70% archers and 30% infantry and had like 50 casualties, right? We'd completely embarrass them and just shellac their whole force. Maybe we'll put that episode at the end of this episode if we can't come up with another example. But I want to try the Sturgians, right? A lot of guys like dismounting the Drudzinics. It is a useful way to use them, so let's go ahead and try that. We've reloaded the menu here. You can see we're almost 70% cavalry. We've got a few archers and infantry here, and all tier 4, 5, and 6 units for both sides. I like showing this occasionally just in case people, for some reason or other, think we're trying to mislead you. That's not the purpose of our channel. We're trying to help you guys out, help you get better at Bannerlord, help illustrate some of the problems with the game. Now, the bottom line is that spear cavalry, those guys who have a sword, shield, and a spear, in other words, no weapon that they can throw, are really weak. That's the bottom line. If I was playing Sturgia, I would not even have Drudzinic champions. I would focus on these spear guys, right? Those javelins are going to kill. And I think this example here, well, maybe not this example, but the example where we're in charge will define that, right? We have 80 Drudzinic champions and 79 of their either their horse raider or the hardened brigands. One of those guys is their tier 5 javelin guys. I bet they do better than the tier 6 Drudzinics. And I'm betting because I know the answer. I've already had battles like this before. They simply do better. Now I'm going to suicide here because I do want the overhead view, and the RTS mod has been a little bit I got one shot. The RTS mod has been a little bit wonky for me so far. So here comes this huge Sturgian force, right? And you see horse kills. Right now they're killing the horse archers. The enemy horse archers killed themselves, immolated themselves. But look at this cavalry charge. Now, the javelins are already starting to fly. We'll zoom in here so you can see them. And that's what's causing all the deaths, right? Not a single horseman has reached their ranks. But look at how slow they're also coming up. I mean, they look like they were taking a Sunday saunter through a nice park instead of flying into the battle of their life. Some of these guys are coming up faster, but it just doesn't do anything to infantry. And that is because Bannerlord calculates damage for ranged weapons. It seems differently than movement of units. Ranged weapons do a lot more damage than a fast-moving horse, and I'll get into that more. But this is a massacre, right? We're speeding it up here because it's really bad. The enemy's going to have about 70%, give or take, of its forces left. And really none of the units here that the AI was in charge of did well. I guess the Sturgian Archer, they did okay. But everything else was a calamity. Let's use some actual tactics. Again, same exact units. We're not going to change anything. We could still have success even with this, but we're going to use some dynamic tactics. We're not just going to fly in there, F1, F3. There's a lot of guys that still do that, and boy, our channel's the place to escape that. F1, F3 is like a bad girlfriend you guys need to get away from, and I'm here to help you. All right, so the 4th and 5th divisions are going to be our attacking divisions, and I'll explain. This 5th division, by selecting the highest chevron there, the strongest units, all of those are their tier 6 Drudzinic. We're going to use them on foot. We're going to try to get them behind the enemy, flank the enemy, take them off their horses where they're more vulnerable to archers, and then have them destroy the enemy from behind. Meanwhile, this 4th division, I bet, does the most killing. We'll see. I could be wrong, but these are all the javelin units here, right? This is your, I can't remember which one is which. I can never remember the name, but they have the horse raider and the brigand, and they're basically tier 4 and tier 5 jav cav. Now, javelins, and I want to include this because this is part of our 1.3 guide, javelins are stronger now in Bannerlord. Incredibly, they made ranged units even more powerful. I think, honestly, that's the opposite direction Tale World should be heading. The game already favors ranged units, and now javelins are even more accurate. So this is going to be interesting to see how bad these guys fizz the enemy. Now we're presenting also, we're presenting a defensive front here for their horse archers. Our horse archers, their horse archers rather, are shooting at our center lines there. We're going to flank hard with the rest of our troops. And it's interesting, the AI is prioritizing our cavalry. We sent them way up in the hills, and the enemy's coming over here trying to chase us. So that's kind of interesting. We'll be able to make them fight our main force here eventually because, of course, we want to flank with those other forces. Now, I'm going to attack their horse archers because the AI is dumb enough to let us do this, right? We have archers back there that are now going to be pelting the enemy. We've got that cav division. And spear cavalry, that's about the one big use for them. They do pretty well against horse archers because the horse archers have no shield. They get stabbed over and over again. As long as you have a fair amount, they do pretty well. Now, on the enemy's flank here, this is the enemy's left flank, we're bringing in the 4th and 5th Division. This is the Jav Cav and those Druids. So I know it seems like a lot of tactics here, and maybe the next battle we'll do a little bit less. On the far side over there, our cavalry, I'm micromanaging it to destroy horse archers, because once those horse archers are swarmed, we can get that cav line to the other enemy flank. When you have lots of cavalry, that's your advantage. And of course, in these scenarios, all of these scenarios, we have a cavalry-heavy army. Now, there are advantages. I'll mention this because some guys want to think about the whole picture. There are advantages to having a heavy cavalry army outside of the battle. And one of them, of course, is campaign map movement. Your army will move faster on the battlefield, so you'll be able to choose your battles. There is a strong argument, I think, even for having cavalry for that reason alone. If you're not great at tactics and you have a lot of cavalry, at least you can run away from a force that's larger than yours. Now, we're forcing the enemy off their flank. We're just going to push their cavalry out of the way, and if they attack, we're going to destroy them. Their horse archers just literally suicided. Now we have the 5th and 4th behind the enemy. So the 5th can charge. We can actually charge with the 4th and the 5th. And this 4th Division, we're going to bring up here and have these guys unload javelins. Now watch this shit. This 4th Division, we're going to actually basically set right behind the enemy here. And they have all their javelins, right? To this stage, we've told them basically hold fire. We're sort of skirmishing with the enemy cavalry. We're doing some good damage again. Like we've mentioned before in previous battles, we are fighting these enemy cavalry wings with an outnumbered advantage. Basically, we have about a 2-to-1 advantage cavalry on cavalry, so we're having some fortunate success there. Now, this infantry line's about to die because their cav support is gone. Here comes our javelin throwers. They're right behind the enemy, and I'm just going to position them literally right behind the enemy and tell them, kill everything. And this is going to be fun to watch. Just an absolute javelin destruction. The death spam just fizzed. On the other side here, we could start pushing in our infantry and cavalry for the kill. The 5th Corps of Elite Druids. I'd like to get them around the corner here. Ironically, all our cavalry, we have so much cavalry, it's in the way here. I'm trying to get this 5th Division. I'm actually fumbling with my commands here. I'm trying to get this 5th Division closer to the enemy before they dismount. And this is actually, it does illustrate one of the problems with cavalry. If you have too many cavalry, they actually get in each other's way, right? I'm trying to get this 5th Division up close to the enemy, and we have so many cavalrymen in the way that it's hard for them to even get there. I'm just going to dismount them right here. This battle's already pretty lopsided. Once those Druids come up, and we just dismounted them, charge. Now the death spam's just going to fizz. The enemy's surrounded. There's still javelins hitting them in the back. You can see these guys are still chucking javelins, and these poor Imperials are just... That guy got hit in the face. That guy's eviscerated. They're being completely torn apart by javelins. On the other side, of course, the infantry, cavalry. Just everybody's having a blast here. And that Imperial force just got mangled, right? This was really bad. And I think, again, it highlights the power of javelins. Now, this is your job, of course. Come in here and kill these cowards with these Imperials. Think you could conquer all Calradia? We disagree, right? Have an axe to the back of the head, dude. And what a whipping. Illustrating, I think, primarily the power of Jav Cav, right? Those guys came up, and I'll have to go back and look at that, but it seemed like it just flushed green to the bottom of the screen, right? The enemy's in a compacted mass. The AI's even more accurate with javelins today. That was ugly. Now let's do, let's do a slightly simplified version because I know some guys and we do 4, 5, 6 divisions, they're getting confused. I think you should always use 4 divisions with the Sturgians. At a minimum, separate those Javcav from their Drudzinics. And by the way, right, if you're making your army and you get to troop tree decisions, I don't think I would have a lot of Drudzinics in my army, right? I think I would have, literally, if I had a choice between, say I can build an army to play the AI. If I had a choice between 150 Drudzinic champions, tier 6, or 150, I think it's the horse raider, the Sturgian raider, the tier 5, I would take the tier 5, which illustrates, I think, the problem with spear cavalry and Bannerlord. The tier 5 javelin thrower is more preferential to an experienced player like me. I think that says a lot about the state of Bannerlord. They need to adjust spear cavalry. Supposedly with 1.3, they're working on that. Now, I admit, 1.3 is in beta still, so we can't cast judgment here. We can't say they haven't fixed cavalry. They're still working on stuff, and so we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. That said, they really need to boost spear cavalry. All right, their horse archers are charging for some reason. It's 30 horse archers charging several hundred horses. What we're going to do here on the simple side is basically have our divisions up a hill on the opposite side of the battle, and then we're going to charge in with this Javcav and just throw javelins all over the place. It's in a big long wedge back there. That way they throw javelins, right? If it's in a really tight packed mass of cavalry, some of them don't have line of sight. So I prefer a big, long, skinny line, maybe 3 deep at most. That way they can just fire away. Now what I'm going to do here is just move them almost right into the face of the enemy. You see that big, long line? There's 2 reasons I'm doing that. Because that's where I want them to start throwing. And also, when they start throwing, they're going to run up there as fast as they can. And they'll have all that momentum, right? So these guys are going to throw a huge amount of javelins. In fact, this cavalry division's in for it. These Imperials are going to catch 1,000 javelins in the face. It'll be interesting to watch them. You can see them getting ripped off their horses left and right. The death spam lights up as they get shot to pieces. Now we're going to move them in closer here, of course, because the enemy doesn't have that many cavalry. Now we have the 3rd division here, which is basically our Drudzinics. And notice they're playing defensive. And we run into the same problem, right? A cavalry traffic jam. However, our Javcav is going berserk, right? The death spam there is mostly Javcav. They are just unloading. They're going crazy. They're on the flank. Now we can tell them to charge. If they charge and kind of go backwards like this, what I actually would prefer is that you face them in the direction you want them to go, or even just point over there and say, I want you guys to go behind the enemy. But I think at this stage, with the Javcav on the side of the enemy, the Drudzinics dismounted and charging with the infantry, our archers uphill, I think we're going to win this battle with these very simplistic moves here. Again, we dismounted all of the Drudzinics. And it might be a strange concept. Why does that work in Bannerlord? The main reason is concentration. You can simply look at it this way. When you shield wall cavalry compared to shield wall infantry, say it was a 30-meter area, there's like 4 or 5 times as many infantrymen standing side to side as there are cavalry. In other words, you have more guys killing in a smaller space. That's clearly advantageous for warfare. And it's not a blowout like the first battle, of course, because we used more advanced tactics. We had a couple different options that we didn't really use here. We might have gotten lucky with some of the terrain, but it's still a massacre, right? We're crushing this force. The same force that pulverized the AI, right? The AI basically mouth breathes and charges with most of its units. It doesn't flank. When you have a brute heavy force like we do with a lot of infantry and cavalry, the AI is like, no, charge, right? And look at the kill ratios, right? The Drudzinic didn't even get a 2-to-1. The horse raider gets almost a 3-to-1, right? So it's a clear, better unit in Bannerlord. And unfortunately, I don't think that's either well known or even being adjusted to by Tailworlds. That's something they should probably fix. All right, well, we're going to do more cavalry tactics in the upcoming episodes. Please hit that like button on the way out, friends, and I will see you fellas next time.